been asking for it since my week 1 video went up. People have been asking me about week 9 Flask. There's probably not a whole lot of information out there because this is a big one. It's tough to unpack, it's tough to explain, and on top of that I did have to register for a new account for a new token, and I had to redo all of this because there's been some changes. Now, getting into this, there's a lot that you should have read already, and this is going to be a difficult project even if you've read it all because you don't have the know-how to complete it. Even if you watch everything that's out there that's available, it's still going to be a tough one. So we're going to walk through this to the best of my ability to help you understand. First thing I want to point out is even if you've already done this, I wasn't quite sure what the note was at top, but do remember, because it doesn't say that it was updated, so still remove your helpers.py file and get a new helpers file. Do that while you're in CD Finance. So CD Finance RM helpers.py, then get the new one just to make sure everything's working out right. After you've read everything, we're getting into it assuming you've gone through all your resources. Now, the tutorial that I have here is going to be based on what I did to make this work. You should be making changes, and if you are using this video to help you complete the course, you definitely should be going under these special requests or these personal touches. If you're going to use this code and you're going to walk through it and understand it, I understand that. However, make sure you do these personal touches because by the time you're done with this video, which should shorten how long it takes you, you should have a better understanding and you should go through and add those things into your code. Getting started, the first thing it wants us to work on is our register function. So we are going to hop into that. That is in your app.py file. There are a lot of notes in this because as I go through this, I'm going to be explaining it as best I can, and I'm going to be taking you over those notes and going through that information to help you follow along. As we're running down register, you'll see here that all of the notes are already included. So once you have define register, I put the note first here because it was the first thing it asked us to do. Now this code jumps back and forth a lot and actually gets a little bit confusing. I don't know why they didn't do a top down, not a fan, but we're going to keep moving forward. The first thing you want to do is forget any user session, right? So you want to clear the session, right? That's our logout function. So we want to make sure it's empty when we get started on this. We want to make sure the user has reached it via the post method, which they have up here, and ensure a username was submitted as well as a password. So if you don't enter a username or you don't enter a password, or if the passwords don't match, all of those things need to throw errors. Password confirmation is right here. So you have enter username, then they enter their password, then they enter the password again. Now you're matching those two passwords, right? Then we're going to query the database for the username. Ensure that it doesn't already exist. So in this database, you can't have a username that has already been submitted. In other words, if I use my first name and I put in Devin and I try and make a new user that's been Devin, we have to create another unique ID. So once we check the database for the new username, we're going to ensure that that name does not already exist, and then we're going to insert the user into the database. Then we're going to query the database for the newly inserted user and remember which user has logged in. Then finally it's going to redirect you to the home page, which actually is not going to work at first because they have you do the register function before they have you do the index function. So once you complete register and you test it, because you should be testing these at each phase, you should be able to register, but you should have a 404 error on your index once you've logged in. Then we have user reach route via GET. So we click the link and redirect it into the register.html website. The register.html website has to be set up. You have to go into your templates over here. You can't see it, it's off the screen. You're going to right click. You're going to add new folder in your templates, and it's going to be register.html. If you don't name it that, you got to change render template from register.html to whatever you named it, .html. We're using Python here. So when you go to register HTML and every subsequent HTML you use, you should be extending layout.html. That's one of the beautiful functions of Python. It's very simple to do the code once, which we have on layout.html, and extend that to every page there. So you're always going to extend. You're going to use your block title for register. That's going to be the name of the website. And then your block main is here. This is the form I've created to make a registered user. Okay? So going back real quick, this is our full register function. I'm going to give you guys some time to pause. We're going to start at the top up here. So here's where it begins. Pause this video if you need it. We're going to scroll down a little bit to give you the rest of the code. Pause this video if you need it. Finally, going on to register. Pause this video if you need it. So when you click on your Flask and you run Flask from your terminal window, I'm going to move up the terminal here. Once it's cleared out, I'm going to clear it, and we're going to do Flask run. Now you have this website running here, and you should be able to, from the home page, click on register, pick a new username. I've already used mine as an example, so we're going to start with a brand new one. We're just going to use my last name. We're going to put in a password here, and we're going to put in the same password here, and we're going to register. Now at this stage, you should not be getting this page here. You should have an error because we have not yet built index. Okay, so we're going to move on to part 2. For the second portion of this, all we're doing is getting a stock quote. This is probably one of the shortest portions you're going to put in here, but again, kind of out of order for me. So you're going to have your login required, define quote, get the stock quote. So if request method is post, the symbol is equal to request form get the symbol, quote lookup symbol. If not, return apology, meaning the symbol is not available in the database that we have. And we're going to render the template quote. Otherwise, we're going to render the template quote. So either way, whether you have a valid symbol or not, it's going to return you to the quote page to get another one. You are also going to need your quote.html, which you have up here. And your HTML should look something like this. Again, your extending layout. The block title is quote. In your main, you have your HTML here, which is your form for getting symbol, text, submit. And once you run that in your Flask, you now should have something that looks like this when you go to quote. So you pick a stock ticker, you can put in T if you don't know what you're looking for, get quote. AT&T, that's the price. Symbol stays there. Let's look at Apple. Get quote. And that's our Apple quote. And we'll go through, and each time you get a quote, you'll be able to get a quote. That's all your quote page should do. Pause the video if you need it here for the HTML file. Pause the video here if you need it for the quote portion. Now we have to move on to our buy function. This is going to be a larger function here. So first we have our post request method. We have to get the symbols and the shares. Make sure it is a symbol, otherwise must provide symbol. And if you don't put in the proper number, you must provide a positive integer for the number of shares. In the quote function, we're looking up the symbol. If there is none, we're going to apologize, symbol not found. We're looking up the price. Right here is an important one. This is from our database. We're selecting cash from users where the ID is equal to the user's ID and the session is equal to user ID and cash. Everyone starts out with $10,000. That's going to be important. That's going to be one of the things that we have to do here. The other thing we're going to have to do shortly is we're going to have to update your SQL because we don't currently have everything that we need. Now moving on, you're going to have your price is the quote is the price, the total cost, the shares times the price, so how much it'll cost. Select cash from users where it's the current user logged in and their ID is cash. If cash is less than the total cost, sorry, you don't have enough cash to make this purchase. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to update the users table. I'm going to scroll this up. We are going to execute update user set cash equal to cash minus the total cost where the ID is equal to the user ID. Total cost is equal to the total cost underscore ID user underscore ID session of user ID. Then we have to add the purchase to the history table. This is where we're going to have to update your SQL. You're going to insert into transactions user ID, symbol, shares, price, values. Under the user ID session, user ID. You're going to flash a message here. This is optional. Bought, shares, symbol, user, cost, return. Now the flash was indicated on the CS50 Finance that you could do these things. You did not have to. Once we execute the buy here, we're going to go to our buy.html. Pause the video here if you need to know how to do it. Extend layout, block title buy. This is your HTML here. We just have a simple form where you input the text symbol, you input the number of shares, you click submit, and you go buy. Going back to app.py, let's get this on the screen. Pause the video here for the first portion. Pause the video here for the remainder. Now before this will work, before you can run this, you have to update your SQL file. You are going to need a command that allows you to use something called transactions, because your current SQL file only shows your user's database. You're going to use something like this. Pause the video here to update the SQL file. Now remember, in order to do that, you're going to do SQLite3 finance.db, and then once you're in SQLite, you're going to run this code right here, and it's going to give you a transactions table, a new entry into your SQL database. This is the part most people are probably missing. The Python actually comes easier. Updating SQL, people forget to do that. Once that is updated, you're going to go .exit to get out of SQL, which will take you back into your finance, and you're going to do flask run to get the website up and running again. Now you've updated your SQL table, you've updated your app.py file, and you've updated your buy form. Once you have that in play, you should have a buy function here where you can take your new money, you can buy a symbol of T, you can buy 10 of them and click buy. And now you own 10 shares of AT&T. Where you can buy and click buy. And now you'll see I've executed and purchased 5 shares of Apple with this price and this total value. Now again, at this stage, you won't actually see that information yet. You probably will only see this little flash that we inserted up here. That is because we have not updated the index file yet. We're getting to that. That's going to come next. So you should only be seeing bought 5 shares of Apple at this price. This portfolio is probably not there yet. That's okay. We're getting to it. Let's move on to number 4, and that's finally our index. We need to get users' stocks and shares. So from stocks.db execute, select symbol, the sum of their shares as total shares from transactions, which is a table we already built, where the user ID is equal to the user ID, group by symbol having total shares greater than 0. User ID session is equal to the user ID that's currently logged in. Get the user's cash balance. DB execute select cash from users where the ID is equal to the current user in the current session. Get their cash. Initialize variables for the values. Total cash equals cash. Grand total equals cash. Iterate over the stock prices and add the total value. So for stock, in stocks, quote, look up the stock symbol, find the stock name, price, and value, and we're going to do the total value plus the stock value and the grand total. We're going to return the rendered template index. Stocks equals stocks, cash equal cash, total value equal total value, grand total equals grand total. That's going to lead us on to our HTML. Pause the video here for the first portion. Moving on to index.html. Scrolling up to the top here. This one's a little bit longer, so you're going to pause twice. Extend layout, block title portfolio, end block, block main portfolio. Now in the HTML, we have a table because we wanted to make it look nice. You don't actually have to install a table. You could do a very ugly left aligned kind of row by row. It's not going to look good. So the reason mine has more code is we wanted to make the table that's all centered that you saw on my screen. We wanted to make that look a little bit nicer. So we have symbol, name, shares, price, and total value. For stock in stocks, we have stock symbol, stock name, stock total shares, stock price, times stock total shares, because that's going to be our total value. So we need to take the number of shares times the number of price. That's the total value. That comes from right here. So we have total shares, stock price, symbol name. So we're using these things that we created here and we're carrying them over into index.html. These things down here are part of the table alignment so that everything goes up nicely. If you did it this way, I'm going to let you pause here for the HTML portion of this code because the top portion is redundant and should be easy. Pause here. Once you have that, your index page should look like mine, and now you should start to see a lot of similarities, because what we've done is we've added this very nice table in the middle: symbol, name, shares, price, total value. The total value is the number of shares you have times the price. The cash value you have is what's remaining, and the total value is those shares plus your remaining total cash. That index is what creates this. So now you should, when you go to CS50 Finance or should go to your home page, this is what you should finally be able to see. This is your index.html via Python. This is the table that you have in there. Everything should start to look like this. Now, part of the challenge I'm leaving up to you is this total value should be something that you get into USD, that you get into dollar format, that you get these decimals down to just 2 decimal points, and it would be nice if you added a dollar symbol in front of them. Get those in there. It's not a lot to do considering what you've been given. You can definitely make those changes and get that updated. Cell is going to be one of the hardest ones you have. Please note there is a comma right here that's off screen. So right here after greater than 0, quote, comma. Don't forget that one's there. So we have to get the user stocks, where stocks or shares are greater than 0. If the user submits the form via post, we have to get the symbol, we have to get the shares. If it's not a symbol, we need to provide an apology. If there's not shares, we need to provide an apology. For stock in stocks, where the symbol is equal to symbol and the total shares is greater than the number of shares, we have to return an apology. If they don't have that many shares, sorry, you can't sell that, you don't have it. Get a quote. Look up the symbol. If quote is none, you've got to return an apology. Price is equal to the quote price, so then we're setting that. Total sales equals the shares times the price. Now we have to update the user table. Execute. Update users set cash equal to cash plus the total sales for that current user. Total sales is equal to total sales, user ID session of the current session. Add the sale to the history table. Now you're going to insert into transactions. That's the SQL you added earlier. So we're adding that into transactions, user ID, symbol, share, price, values. We're adding all of these things into the history sale that we have. I did include a flash here, a little bit of a stylistic thing. Most of mine have flashes, so hey, you sold a share. Otherwise, return apology, symbol not found if the user visits the page. Else, render template cell.html. Let's get into that. Cell.html, actually not as complicated. Pause the video here if you need it. So you're doing a form here for sell, much like you did for buy. All we're doing is creating sell, number of shares, and then a button that says sell. Going back to app.py for the first portion of your code, go ahead and pause here. Remember there's a comma right after this. For the second portion of your code, go ahead and pause here. Once you have that working, you should be able to go from your portfolio. We're going to sell 5 of those AT&T shares. Click on sell, symbol T. I chose a drop-down method. You'll notice that. So the reason this makes more sense is that now I can't sell a share that I don't have now. Number of shares, we're going to sell 5. Sell. Sold 5 shares of AT&T. Our balance is still the same. We have a little more cash, a little less AT&T. Now, that drop-down menu comes from the cell.html. The drop-down menu made a lot more sense because now people won't try to sell the stock that they don't have. This iteration came later for me, which is why in the app.py file, which is no trouble, there's some code that says you don't have enough shares or you must provide the right symbol, things like that. I built that code when I had the sell page similar to the buy page, which meant you were typing in a symbol to sell. Once we switched it to the drop-down menu, you can't sell something you don't have because it won't be available in the drop-down menu. That being said, let's move on to history. Now, history looks like a short, easy function, but this is actually one that I struggled with a lot because I was trying to figure out how to get the right HTML table with descending order of transactions that happened. In doing that, what I had to do was I had to go to my SQL database, which meant I had to go to finance.db. Then I had to open this, and I had to look in the SQL database that I made, which was transactions, which you see right there. And then over here, you'll see timestamp. I'm going to move this over before I close it. So here, you'll see that timestamp. So we have timestamp in year, month, day format, followed by hour, minute, and second. That's going to be relevant. So going back to app.py here, we have query the database for the user's transactions ordered by most recent first. So select from transactions where the user ID is the current user, order by timestamp. That's all we needed. Then we're going to render the history page, which means we need the history.html. This code had to be a little bit more. Pause it here for history app. Under history.html, we have extend layout block title history, type, symbol, shares, price, total, timestamp. Then we have for transaction in transaction, so we're using a SQL query. Transaction type, symbols, shares, price, transaction shares times transaction price, and then the timestamp. Once I was able to finally get this figured out, what it equated to was this here when you click on history. Now you'll see that I bought 10 shares of AT&T, then I bought 5 shares of Apple, then I bought or sold 5 shares of AT&T. And the timestamps here will continue to go in order of all of the actions that I make. So if I went back and I bought another share, F7, I just bought 7 shares of F, which is Ford Motor Company. When you go back to history, now Ford should be at the top because we have those in order. That is everything that this has asked you to do. I'm going to close my Flask. I'm going to stop running Flask. Listen, I know a lot of you needed help with week 9, and I'm happy to provide that help. If you got this help and you didn't do as much of the work, but following along helped you learn, that is the goal here. Please add some sort of personal touch. Please add those dollar signs, those commas, whatever you have to do. Do something to make this your own. There's plenty of things within the code that you can change too. If you guys are doing Python by now, you know that some of the things that I call these, you can go ahead and change those so that you understand what is changeable within a code and what is not. So please take a look at that. I really hope this helped. I know it's a really hard project to get done and you have a limited amount of time to do it thanks to your APK key. Listen, this is CS50. That was week 9 Flask. I am Devin, and as always, you are awesome. If these are helping, like, comment, subscribe. Help me keep doing these things. Help me reach more people. Let me help them get through this like I helped you. Hang in there. Keep up the good work. We'll see you soon.